Welcome to the deep dive. For centuries, trying to figure out why people break the law often felt stuck between two ideas.
Yeah, like either some people are just, born bad, that biological view.
Right, or it's all down to these huge impersonal forces, poverty, bad housing, maybe systemic issues.
And look, those factors are definitely important. We can't ignore them. But they sometimes make the individual seem, well, either totally predetermined or just passively swept along.
So today we're looking at something else. We're focusing on the middle ground, really.
Exactly. We're diving deep into what are called social process theories.
Okay. And the core idea here is,
The core idea is that what really shapes whether someone becomes involved in crime isn't just where they start in life. It's more about how they're molded, by the world around them, by their experiences.
so we're moving past just looking at class or genetics as the only factors.
Right. It's about the interactions. An individual's likelihood of engaging in crime gets shaped by how they interact with different people, different organizations, institutions.
Like family, school, friends.
Precisely. That whole process of socialization, it's like these interactions form the blueprint for behavior.
The sources we looked at really emphasize this. Socialization isn't a one-off thing, it's continuous. And it rests on these pillars: education, work, family life, and peer relationships.
Yeah, the sheer weight of just daily human interaction, that's what steers the ship, according to these theories.
What I find really striking about this whole approach, though, is the conclusion it points towards.
What's that?
Well, unlike theories that focus on fixed traits, something you can't easily change, this social process idea offers a bit more. Hope, maybe.
That's a good way to put it. The conclusion is basically that anyone, if they develop a positive self-image, learn solid moral values, and get consistent support.
From parents, friends, teachers, the community.
Exactly. They have a really high chance of resisting the pull towards crime. It makes prevention seem possible, something we can actually work on through, like, social repair.
Okay, so how do we map this out? You mentioned different theories under this umbrella.
Right. We're going to look at three main theoretical approaches. First, there's social learning theory. Pretty straightforward. Crime is learned.
Okay, makes sense. Learn it like anything else.
Then there's social control theory. This one kind of flips the question.
Well,
Instead of asking why crime, it asks, why don't more people commit crime?
so it looks at what keeps us in line, the restraints.
Exactly. Internal things, external things, what keeps us, honest.
And the third one?
The third one is maybe the most challenging, I guess. Social reaction theory. But most people know it as labeling theory.
Labeling theory, right. This is about the power of labels, how society reacts.
Precisely. The potentially destructive power of those labels applied by society, by the justice system. It's a really different angle.
Okay, sounds like we've got a lot to unpack. Where do we start with socialization itself?
Well, you have to start at the beginning, right? The family. The sources are really clear.
Mm-hmm.
Family relations aren't just like one factor among many. They're the fundamental training ground.
The first classroom for behavior, for communication?
Absolutely. The analysis you mentioned highlighted parenting factors. Can parents communicate well,
Yeah.
show affection, provide discipline that's, proper and consistent?
But it's not just about stopping kids misbehaving now. The sources say these things predict behavior way down the line, into adulthood. It sets a baseline.
It really does. But of course, families can also be where risks come from.
Like what kind of risks?
Well, things like high family stress. Divorce, for example, can be really destabilizing, disrupting routines, parental focus.
Makes sense.
And then there's maybe the biggest one, family deviance.
Meaning if a parent or sibling is involved in crime or antisocial stuff.
Exactly. That acts as a powerful learning model for a child, it seems.
Oh.
Well, legitimate, almost, because it's coming from inside the family.
And the sources also brought up this idea of parental efficacy. That's not just about being there, right?
No, it's more subtle. It's about whether parents believe they can actually manage their kids effectively. Can they set clear boundaries and stick to them? Do they feel like they have control?
So if efficacy is low,
Then the parents might just stop trying. They feel powerless against, say, peer pressure or other outside influences. And that lack of guidance, that vacuum, it's really damaging.
and connected to that, tragically, is child maltreatment.
Yeah, that's devastating on multiple levels. It
Oh.
doesn't just model violence. It fundamentally breaks that first, most crucial social bond. Makes it incredibly hard for the child to trust any authority figure later on.
You mentioned family deviance.
Hmm.
Learning from parents. This brings up that classic issue in criminology, doesn't it? The sources pointed it out.
Ah, the chicken or the egg problem.
Exactly. If a parent engages in crime, and the child does too, is it purely learned behavior?
Or is there something else going on? If the parent has, say, poor impulse control, maybe some underlying trait, and the child inherits that trait.
Then isn't that bringing biology or individual traits back into the picture, even if we're talking about social process?
It definitely pushes the boundaries of the theory. It's a valid challenge. But the strong social process perspective would argue back.
How so?
They'd say, okay, maybe some traits exist, but the criminal expression of those traits, the specific behaviors, are still learned through association, through modeling within that family environment. The pathway is social, even if the predisposition has other roots.
Okay, that distinction is important. So moving beyond the family home, what other institutions shape us?
Well, education is huge. The sources show a really tangible link, almost immediate, between dropping out of school and a higher risk of getting into trouble.
Yeah, that feels intuitive. Dropping out cuts off a major conventional tie, right?
Absolutely. It removes structure, control, commitment, all the things we'll talk about more with control theory. And it limits your legitimate opportunities, almost pushing you towards illegitimate ways to get what you need or want.
What about friends? Peer relations. We always hear about peer pressure.
We do, and it's important. But interestingly, the source material was actually quite cautious here. It explicitly said the exact relationship between peers and crime is, well, unclear.
Unclear. Why?
Because it's hard to untangle influence from selection. Do good kids turn bad because their friends pressure them? Or do kids who are already leaning towards deviance just find each other?
Ah, birds of a feather flocking together.
Pretty much. The sources suggest it's usually a complex mix. So just having deviant friends isn't the whole story. It's about the quality of those interactions, the nature of the influence.
Okay. And one more factor mentioned was religion.
Yes. There's actually growing evidence about the role religion can play in behavior control.
How does that work?
Well, it offers a formal system of moral values, obviously, but it also often strengthens community bonds, provides a network of support, supervision. It can be a powerful socializing force for conformity.
Okay, so we've established this idea of socialization as the key battleground. Let's get into the first big theory group, social learning.
Right. Social learning theory. The basic idea is crime is learned. Simple as that.
Like learning a trade or a language.
Pretty much. You learn the norms, the values, the actual behaviors associated with criminal activity. And crucially, this learning tends to happen most powerfully during adolescence, from people you're close to, friends, family.
And the foundational theory here is Sutherland's differential association theory.
Edwin Sutherland, yes. What's really ambitious about his theory, as the sources note, is that he tried to make it explain all kinds of crime. Street crime, white-collar crime, everything.
How did he do that? He laid out some principles, right?
9 of them. We should probably unpack the key ones.
Go for it.
Okay. First principle. Criminal behavior is learned. Not inherited, not invented. Learned.
Straightforward enough.
Second, learning happens through interaction with other people, usually in small, intimate groups. You don't really learn it from watching movies, according to Sutherland. It's person to person.
Okay.
Third,
what you learn isn't just why to commit crime, the motives. You also learn the techniques, how to actually do it.
like how to pick a lock or how to cook meth or how to embezzle funds. Exactly. The practical how-to is just as important as the attitude.
What else?
Fourth principle, the learning includes absorbing specific directions of motives and drives. And a big part of this is your perception of the law.
How do you mean?
If your close associates teach you that the law is stupid or corrupt or only targets certain people, well, your motivation to actually respect that law is going to evaporate.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Undermines the whole thing.
Then the fifth principle adds complexity. It says these differential associations, the interactions that matter vary. They vary in frequency, how often, duration, how long, priority, how early in life, and intensity, how important the relationship is.
Okay, hang on. Let me process that. So like learning from your older sibling who you see every day, have known forever, and really look up to, that's going to be way more powerful than learning from some random acquaintance you just met.
Precisely. That combination of frequency, duration, priority, and intensity determines the weight of the influence.
Got it. What's next?
Sixth, the process of learning crime uses all the same mechanisms involved in any other learning. There's nothing psychologically weird or different about it.
And the seventh principle, you said it was important.
Yes, because it avoids making it too simple. Seventh, Criminal behavior is an expression of needs and values, sure, but, and this is the key bit, it's not explained solely by those needs and values.
Why not? If you need money, you steal. Seems simple.
Because lots of people need money but don't steal. The need might be universal, but the method you choose to meet that need, getting a job versus robbing someone, that's the learned part, according to Sutherland.
Ah, okay. The path you take is learned. And does the evidence back this up?
Generally, yes. Studies consistently find correlations. Have deviant friends, hold deviant attitudes, you're more likely to commit deviant acts. It lines up.
So Sutherland laid the groundwork. Who built on it?
Akers and Burgess came along with differential reinforcement theory. They took Sutherland's ideas and blended them with psychological learning theory, basically, behaviorism. Think rewards and punishments.
Okay, so like Skinner's rats, but for crime.
Sort of. If Sutherland explains who you learn from, differential reinforcement explains why the behavior sticks. It adds the idea of conditioning.
So if I commit a crime and get something good out of it, money, status with my friends.
That's positive reinforcement. Makes you more likely to do it again.
And if I try something and it goes badly or my friends make fun of me?
Negative reinforcement, or punishment, makes you less likely. The key idea, according to the sources, is that the main influence comes from those groups that control individuals' major sources of reinforcement and punishment.
Your immediate social circle, basically.
Exactly. And this helps explain why crime can persist even when society at large disapproves or punishes it. If the rewards within your group, respect, belonging, money, outweigh the risks from the outside, the behavior keeps getting reinforced internally.
Okay, that adds another layer. What's the third social learning theory we need to cover?
That would be neutralization theory from Matza and Sykes. This one focuses less on how you learn crime and more on how you justify it to yourself.
Justify it. How so?
They argue that most delinquents aren't, totally rejecting society's values. They still basically believe stealing is wrong, hurting people is wrong.
Okay. So how do they do it then?
They learn techniques to neutralize those values temporarily, like giving themselves a psychological hall pass to break the rules they otherwise accept.
A hall pass. I like that. And this leads to the idea of drift.
Exactly. Matza proposed that individuals aren't fully committed criminals or fully committed conformists. They drift back and forth between conventional behavior and delinquency.
That sounds realistic. Not everyone is all one thing or the other.
Right. And it helps explain why lots of teenagers might shoplift or vandalize something, but then they grow up and stop. They age out as drifting becomes harder or less necessary.
So how do they give themselves this hall pass? What are the techniques?
Matza and Sykes identified 5 main techniques of neutralization. These are the justifications people use.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, deny responsibility. It wasn't my fault. I was drunk. My friends made me do it. You portray yourself as a victim of circumstances, removing your own agency.
Okay, I can see that one. Number 2.
Deny injury. Nobody got hurt. They're insured. They can afford it. I was just borrowing it. You minimize the harm caused by the act.
Yeah.
Very common in property crime or maybe even cheating.
Right.
Third, deny the victim. This is where you say the victim deserved it. They had it coming. They shouldn't have been there. They provoked me.
Yeah.
Make the victim seem unworthy of protection, shifting the blame.
That one's darker.
Fourth,
Condemn the condemners. You turn the tables on the people judging you. The cops are corrupt anyway. Teachers play favorites. My parents are hypocrites. If the authorities are bad, they have no right to criticize you.
deflecting blame onto the system. And the last one?
Fifth, appeal to higher loyalties. This is breaking the law for the sake of your immediate group. I had to protect my friend. I did it for my family. The gang needed me. Loyalty to your crew trumps loyalty to the law. Wow. Those 5 cover a lot of ground. You can almost hear people saying those things.
Absolutely. And the sources say this theory is really useful for explaining 2 things. That aging out process we mentioned.
Because maybe getting a job or married makes it harder to keep using these excuses.
Exactly. Your Spakin conformity goes up. And it also explains non-chronic delinquency people who dip in and out of trouble but never become career criminals. They're just drifting and neutralizing when needed.
Okay, that's a good overview of social learning. Crime is learned, reinforced, and justified. Let's switch gears. What about social control theories?
Right. This is where we flip the question. Social control theory starts from a different assumption. It assumes breaking the law is, well, kind of tempting for everyone. Society offers lots of opportunities for illegal stuff.
So the question isn't why do they do it, but why don't the rest of us do it?
Precisely. Why do people obey the law most of the time? The theory says it's because our behavior, our passions, are controlled by forces both inside us and outside us.
It's about the brakes, not the accelerator.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's about the bonds and controls that stop us from acting on potentially deviant impulses.
And part of that is internal, like our self-image.
Yes, self-concept is important here. The idea is that if your social relationships are bad, poor family life, failure at school, you develop a weak self-concept, low self-esteem.
And that increases risk. Why?
Because you feel like you have less to lose. Your positive image of yourself isn't strong enough to hold you back from behavior that might damage it.
This connects to containment theory, right?
It does. Containment theory uses the idea of buffers. Internal containment is that strong, positive self-image. It insulates you from the pushes and pulls towards crime in your environment. You contain yourself because you value yourself.
And external containment.
That's the stuff outside community supervision, strong social norms, clear rules, belonging to groups that uphold conventional values. Society building walls around you, in a sense.
But the really big theory in this area is Hershey's, isn't it? Social bond theory.
Travis Hershey, yes. Absolutely seminal work. His theory directly links crime to the weakening or breaking of the ties that bind people to society.
So strong ties mean conformity, weak ties mean potential trouble.
That's the core idea. If your bonds to conventional society are strong, you simply have too much to lose by committing crime. When those bonds fray, the calculation changes.
And he identified specific types of bonds, 4 of them.
Yes, 4 key elements of the social bond. They're all interconnected, but we can look at them one by one. The first is attachment.
Attachment, like emotional connection.
Exactly. Sensitivity to others. How much do you care about the opinions and feelings of conventional people, parents, teachers, friends, spouse? If you're strongly attached, you won't want to do things that disappoint them or hurt those relationships. That emotional connection controls you.
Okay, makes sense. What's the second bond?
Commitment. This is the rational investment side of things, sometimes called your stake in conformity.
Stake in conformity, like what you stand to lose.
Precisely. How much time, energy, and effort have you invested in conventional goals? Getting an education, building a career, buying a house, raising a family. The more you've invested, the higher your commitment.
And the less likely you are to risk it all with crime.
Right. Crime becomes an irrational choice if it jeopardizes years of hard work. Someone with few job prospects, no educational goals, they have a low commitment, making crime seem like less of a risk, maybe even a rational alternative.
Okay, attachment and commitment. What's third?
Involvement. This is simpler, more practical. It's about time.
How you spend your time.
Yeah. If you're heavily involved in legitimate activities, school, homework, sports, clubs, a job, hobbies, you literally have less time and opportunity for delinquency.
Idle hands are the devil's workshop.
That's exactly the idea behind the involvement bond. Keeps you busy with good stuff.
And the fourth and final bond.
Belief. This is about whether you accept the legitimacy of society's rules. Do you believe the laws are generally fair and should be obeyed? Do you respect authority figures?
So it's about internalizing the moral code.
Yes. If you genuinely believe stealing is wrong, that's a powerful internal control. But if you've learned, maybe through differential association, like we discussed, that the rules are unfair or don't apply to you, then that belief, that bond, dissolves.
Attachment, commitment, involvement, belief. Hershey argued weakness in any of these increases the risk of deviance.
Exactly. They all work together to tie an individual to conventional society. When those ties weaken, the person is freed up to deviate. It's a very influential and testable theory.
Okay, that covers the why we conform angle. Now for the third perspective, which you said was quite different. Social reaction or labeling theory.
Yes, labeling theory takes a much more critical look at the system itself. It argues that crime isn't just about the individual's behavior, but about how society reacts to that behavior.
So the reaction is key.
It's central. The theory suggests that criminal careers often get started or cemented because of negative interactions, especially with the justice system, police, courts.
How does that work? It's based on symbolic interaction, right?
Exactly. Symbolic interaction theory is the foundation. The idea that we communicate and understand the world through symbols, words, gestures, images.
And in this context, the big symbol is the label, like delinquent or criminal or felon.
Precisely. That label becomes a powerful symbol. And labeling theory makes a pretty radical claim based on this.
Which is?
It argues that crime and deviance aren't defined by the inherent wrongness of an act. They're defined by the social audience's reaction to the act and the person.
Wow, so an act isn't criminal until society says it is and labels it as such.
In essence, yes. The reaction creates the deviance in a social sense. If nobody reacts negatively or if the act isn't discovered, the deviance might not really exist socially.
Oh, that is radical. What happens once that label gets applied?
The consequences can be severe and, crucially, self-fulfilling. The label damages the person's identity. It changes how people see them, how they see themselves.
Makes it hard to go back to being normal.
Extremely hard. Reintegration becomes difficult. And often, the person who's been labeled finds acceptance only among others who share the same label. They join deviant groups or cliques.
And the community plays a role in hardening this label.
Yes, through something called the dramatization of evil. This is when social agents, police, media, courts, even neighbors, exaggerate the seriousness of an initial act. It becomes a public spectacle.
Turning a mistake into a defining characteristic.
Exactly. It solidifies that deviant identity in everyone's eyes, including the person's own.
And then there's retrospective reading.
Right. Once someone is labeled, say, thief, people start reinterpreting their past behavior through that lens. Oh, remember when he borrowed money? He was probably planning something even then.
Yeah.
That quietness wasn't shyness, it was sneakiness.
So the label colors the past, making the deviant identity seem like it was always there, inevitable.
Precisely. And the research, according to the sources, shows this has a dramatic influence on the self-image of offenders. If everyone treats you like a criminal, eventually you might just start thinking of yourself that way and acting that way.
The theory distinguishes between types of deviance, doesn't it? Primary and secondary.
Yes, that's a crucial distinction made by Edwin Lummert. Primary deviance refers to the initial acts, maybe norm violations, minor crimes, things that happen but don't really affect the person's self-concept. They're seen as out of character, easily forgotten.
Like a kid stealing a candy bar, maybe?
Could be. Or getting into a minor fight. It happens, but it doesn't define them.
But secondary deviance is different.
Very different. Secondary deviance occurs when that primary act comes to the attention of important people, parents, teachers, police, and they react by applying a negative label.
And that's when the trouble really starts.
Yes. According to the theory, the person then starts to reorganize their life and identity around the consequences of that label. They commit further deviance because they've been labeled and treated as deviant. The label itself becomes a cause of future crime.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy driven by the reaction.
That's the core mechanism of secondary deviance.
Okay, but who actually gets labeled? Is it random? This leads to the idea of differential enforcement, right?
Exactly. This is perhaps the most critical and politically charged aspect of labeling theory. Critics sometimes say the theory isn't great at explaining why the initial act happened, before the label. But where it's powerful is in analyzing who gets caught and labeled.
And the argument is, it's not applied evenly.
Not at all. The sources state very clearly that the law is differentially applied.
Meaning
It tends to benefit those with economic and social power and penalize the powerless.
so a rich kid and a poor kid commit the same minor offense.
The rich kid's parents might hire a good lawyer, get the charges dropped, maybe arrange some quiet counseling. The label is avoided. No secondary deviance is triggered.
But the poor kid?
The poor kid, or often a minority kid, is more likely, according to the evidence cited, to be arrested in the first place, then more likely to be formally processed, prosecuted, convicted, and saddled with that official label.
So the reaction itself, the labeling process, is biased by social status, by race.
That's the argument. The audience reaction isn't neutral, it reflects existing power structures. Who gets labeled deviant often depends more on who they are than purely on what they did. This links back directly to the idea that deviance is defined by the audience's reaction.
That's a powerful critique of the justice system itself.
It really is. It shifts the focus from just the offender to the system that defines and reacts to them.
So these theories, learning, control, labeling, they're not just academic exercises, are they? They've actually influenced real-world policies.
Oh, absolutely. Since the 1950s, social process theories have had a huge impact on social policy, especially in criminal justice and prevention.
How so? What kind of shift did they cause?
They moved the focus. Instead of just punishing the act, which labeling theory suggests might make things worse.
By reinforcing the label.
Right. The focus shifted towards trying to repair the social bonds that control theory talks about, or addressing the learned behaviors from learning theory. It became more about prevention and reintegration.
Can you give some examples of programs based on these ideas?
Sure. The sources mention Head Start programs as a great example.
Head Start. The early childhood education program, how does that fit?
Well, think about it. It's early intervention. It aims to provide quality education, structured socialization, support for parents.
Ah, boosting parental efficacy, teaching conventional values, building those early attachments.
Exactly. Is trying to build strong social bonds, control theory, and provide positive learning environments, learning theory, right from the start, before problems develop.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Diversion programs. These are a direct response to labeling theory.
Diversion. Diverting people away from the formal system.
Precisely. Especially for minor first-time offenders, often juveniles. The goal is to avoid applying that official, potentially stigmatizing label of criminal or delinquent.
So instead of court and a record.
They might get referred to counseling, community service, maybe mediation. The idea is to handle the primary deviance without triggering the potentially harmful cycle of secondary deviance caused by the label.
Keeping the label off, basically.
That's the explicit aim.
Any other examples?
Restitution programs are another one.
Where the offender has to pay back the victim.
Yes, or repair the damage done. This actually touches on all three theories, in a way.
How so?
Well, making amends reinforces the offender's belief in conventional norms, control theory. It involves them in a legitimate activity, control theory's involvement. And by focusing on repairing harm, it can help reintegrate them into the community, moving past the purely punitive labeling theory. It's about restoring balance rather than just assigning blame.
So these theories really have had practical applications.
Definitely. They've shaped a lot of thinking about how to respond to crime more effectively, focusing on causes and consequences beyond just punishment.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount of ground here. Let's try to synthesize this. We dove deep into these social process theories.
Yeah, moving away from just biology or just broad social structure.
And focusing on interaction. We started with social learning, the idea that crime is learned, like any other behavior, through association, reinforcement, and justification.
Then we flipped it with social control theory, asking why people conform, and finding the answer in the strength of their bonds to society. Attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief.
And finally, social reaction or labeling theory, which put the spotlight on society's role, how applying labels, especially differentially, can actually create and solidify criminal careers.
Right. 3 different lenses,
Yeah.
but all focused on the power of social interaction in shaping behavior.
So the big takeaway for you, listening to this,
Yeah.
what is it?
I think the key lesson is that you really can't understand crime by only looking at the individual in isolation. You absolutely have to consider that complex web they're embedded in.
Their support systems, or lack thereof,
The environments where they learn behavior, positive or negative.
and, crucially, how society itself reacts and defines them. These social processes are constantly at play, influencing who gets drawn into crime and who manages to steer clear or drift away.
It's about the architecture of our social lives.
Okay, so let's leave our listeners with something to really chew on. A final thought based on all this.
Okay.
Consider what happens when you combine the insights of labeling theory with differential enforcement. We've heard that the criminal label isn't just about the act, it's heavily influenced by who commits the act with bias based on class and race.
Okay, the label is unfairly applied, disproportionately landing on the less powerful.
Right. Now think about what happens next. What are the implications of this for all the other institutions in society that rely on someone's past record?
You mean like schools, employers, professional licensing boards, anyone who does a background check?
Exactly. If those background checks constantly bring up a label that we know was potentially applied unfairly in the first place due to differential enforcement.
Then are those institutions just perpetuating the cycle, cementing the effects of secondary deviance that the initial biased labeling might have kicked off?
That's the question. If that label follows you forever, effectively blocking access to legitimate commitment and involvement, is society, maybe unintentionally, making genuine reintegration, rebuilding those social bonds almost impossible for certain groups?
It forces you to ask, is the system designed to eventually forgive and allow reintegration? Or is it, in practice, designed primarily to remember and enforce the label, potentially forever?
A challenging thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.